Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantaram Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Takshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So the verses that we have been studying deal with attachment and desire. And as we saw last time, how attachment to sense objects can lead to what the book keeps on saying, a death, a spiritual death. In other words, our chances of becoming enlightened in this life itself become progressively less the more attached we become to sense objects. And as we saw last week, these sense objects are primarily of 5 kinds, attached to our 5 senses: the sight, sound, smell, touch, and so on. So continuing with that idea, we'll begin today with verse number 78. Vishayasha mahapashat yo vimuktas sudustyajat sa eva kalpate muktyai nanyaf shatshastra vedyapi. It is difficult to get out of the powerful noose of desire for sense objects. Only the person who is free from it is fit for spiritual freedom. Not anyone else, even if they have studied the 6 schools of philosophy. So one thing is very clear, that freedom for desires for sense objects leads to spiritual freedom. And as I have pointed out many times before, desires tend to get demonized if we look at the word in a very spiritual, in a superficial way. Desires in themselves are not good or bad. Desires are simply what spring from the mental impressions present in our mind. These impressions or samskaras are present in the unconscious part of the mind. And because these samskaras are, some are good, some are bad, some are healthy, some are unhealthy. These samskaras are formed from our past thoughts and actions. So it's a mixed bag. And it is these samskaras that produce desires. So if it's a healthy samskara, it will produce a healthy desire. If it's an unhealthy samskara, it will produce an unhealthy desire. Now again, what is healthy, what is unhealthy? How do we make that distinction? One way of making that distinction, the way that Swami Vivekachudamani favored, is whatever goes to make me strong, either physically, mentally, morally, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, whatever goes to make me strong at any of these dimensions is good, is positive, is healthy. Anything that makes me weaker, again, at all these different dimensions, is unhealthy, is bad for me. So that's one way we can distinguish between healthy desires and unhealthy desires. For a spiritual seeker, they could distinguish desires also by asking the question, will the fulfillment of this desire take me closer to my spiritual ideal, or will it take me away from my spiritual ideal? Will it make me remember God more, or will it make me forget God more? So these are the ways we can try to distinguish one desire from another. And if our answer to these questions is, this desire will make me stronger, or this desire will take me closer to my spiritual ideal, then go for it. So fulfilling desires is not bad, provided we know which desires need to be fulfilled and which desires need to be rejected. So whenever these books say freedom from desires to sense objects, at once this bell must ring in our head. These are unhealthy desires. These are negative desires. And of course, unless we become free from these desires, there cannot be moksha, there cannot be freedom, there cannot be enlightenment. And the process I have already described several times before. The samskaras get activated, produce desire, and then the willpower comes into action. The moment the willpower knows this is an unhealthy desire, this will make me forget God, that willpower should refuse to engage with that desire. If it doesn't engage with it, then there is no sankalpa, no intention. When there is no intention, there is no action. If there is no action, that is, if there is no karma, then you are not storing up any karma phala. If you are not storing up any karma phala, then, which is the cause of future births, no more birth. And that is when existing karma gets burnt off by the knowledge of God or by the grace of God, and no new karma is created because you are not engaging in these desires. Some of you who have read the life of Holy Mother Sharda Devi might remember that when Mother visited Sri Jagannath temple in Puri, as she sat there in the temple, a thought came to her mind. That is, so many pilgrims, so many devotees are visiting this sacred temple and having the darshan of the Lord, and they are being liberated. There is a very ancient Sanskrit verse that Rathe Vamanam Drishtva Punarjanma Na Vidyate. Having seen the Lord there in that temple, Punarjanma Na Vidyate, there is no rebirth. That is, a person become liberated. So Mother, the thought came that so many people are coming and having darshan of Sri Jagannath here. They are all getting enlightened. And then Mother later narrated, as soon as that thought came to her mind, she heard a divine voice which said, unless a person becomes free from desires, there is no freedom. It was such a vivid voice that Mother just looked around. Actually, the voice had come from within, from her heart. But it was so strong that she asked this, her companion, who attended on her, who was next to her, I think she was Yoginma, and Mother asked her, looked at her, and Yoginma was also a very advanced spiritual seeker. She nodded, because she also had heard the echo of that sound in her own heart as well. That the word Mother heard was nirvasana. Vasana is desire. Nirvasana, without desire. So unless a person frees themselves from desire for sense objects, they will not be liberated. Verse 79. आपात वैराग्यवतो मुमुक्षून् भवाब्धिपारं प्रतियातु मुद्यतान् आशाग्रहो मज्जते अंतराले निगृह्य कंठे विनिवर्त्य वेगात्. Filled with a frail fit of dispassion and wanting to go beyond the ocean of the world, a spiritual seeker is quickly grasped midway by the neck and drowned by the crocodile of desire. That's a very powerful imagery. A crocodile coming and grasping us by the neck. At least if it is by the holding by the leg or something, at least one might lose a leg but might survive. But if the crocodile catches you by the neck, there is no chance of survival. Filled with the frail fit of dispassion, the word is apat vairagya. Vairagya or dispassion, many people experience dispassion in life, which is not necessarily a long-standing experience. Sometimes there are these kind of occasions in our life where the spirit of dispassion may overwhelm us. But these are usually short-lived moments. Sometimes this apata vairagya, this what is translated here as frail fit of dispassion, is also called smashana vairagya. Smashana means a cremation ground. And the idea is that when a person dies, and especially someone known to us, someone close to us, and we take the body for cremation or burial, at that spot, when either the cremation is taking place, or when you are in a crematorium or in a cemetery, the atmosphere in such a place is very different, very subdued. That's the time usually you won't find people joking. At that point, death doesn't seem to be merely a distant possibility. At that time, when we see someone close to us die and the body being cremated, the reality of death kind of hits us straightly. That time it's difficult to not think that this would be one day my body would come here and exactly would be cremated in this way. And that thought does create, for however short a time, a spirit of detachment. But again, we know that while such moments have come in our lives, they don't stick around, they don't last for long, because the next day or a few days later, we say, well, life has to go on. We get busy with our daily routine, our duties, our responsibilities, and those moments of intense detachment which had come upon us for a short time, they just disappear. And that is why it's called a frail fit of dispassion, a dispassion which is not strong enough, not stable enough to stick around. And so detachment or dispassion can be sometimes divided into three kinds. So this frail fit is sometimes called a manda vairagya, mild. Sometimes when you go to Indian restaurants and you order some dish, they often give you three choices. They'll say mild, medium, or hot. So here, something similar. The detachment or dispassion could be mild, like this frail fit. Only on some occasions it might just come and then go. Or it could be medium, moderate, that you have detachment but not too much, because that detachment gets a little bit counterbalanced by attachment to many other things. And so that's kind of a medium form of detachment. It's called Madhyama Vairagya. And the highest form of detachment is called Uttama Vairagya, highest form of detachment, in which it is said that even the joys of heaven, the joys of the highest heaven, Brahmaloka, will not dissuade this person. This kind of detachment, for those of you who have studied that little book called the Kathopanishad, you see that highest form of dispassion present in the heart of that young boy called Nachiketa, who was offered all the riches in the world, all the joys, all the riches, everything that most people would feel so lucky to get. And he just said, no. If this is not going to give me spiritual enlightenment, I don't want them. So this dispassion can be of various levels. And so this gives us a chance to look in our heart periodically, once in a way, to see what is the level of dispassion in my own heart. This is the way the verses in this book should take us back to our own selves and ask these kind of questions. It's not just about asking what the book is saying, but also what the book is making me ask myself. That's the way this book can have truly a life-transforming effect on me. So this would be one question. Sure, now that I'm interested in spiritual life, I have some dispassion. But at what level? Because once I know what kind of or what intensity of dispassion I have, then I know what I need to do to increase that dispassion. And the way to intensify that dispassion would be to look deeply into the nature of the material world. One thing, it's perishable, it's constantly changing. So there is a lot of variety in the world, which is enticing, which sometimes makes it feel that, well, takes off the boredom, if you like. Because that's why people go look up the internet or read news or keep on glued to television, because things are constantly changing, new images, new sounds, and we just feel that, oh, I'm not getting bored. But if I'm just by myself, then I'm bored. But ultimately, when you begin to think about it, all these images and sounds that we see, not only on television, but in our daily life, what are they ultimately contributing to me as a person, other than exhausting me at the end of the day, other than making me while away the time, and I don't know how time has passed when I'm engaged in dealing with all these forms and images and sounds. But does anything remain with me? Now, it's not to say all of this is useless, clearly. If I can engage with these things of the material world in a way that I learn something. So even if these images and sounds disappear after a while, the lesson that I have learned is not lost. But if I'm not looking for a lesson, if I'm not looking to learn anything, all that I'm looking for is to just while away my time, then that's a big, big loss. So one thing would be to look at the nature of the world, which is always changing and which is perishable, and look at one's own place in this world. Me as a person and me as one of the several billion people on this planet, we find every one of us, as we are now, as completely dispensable, completely forgettable. Millions have lost their lives. Thousands and millions are dying every day. More so during the pandemic, when the reality of sickness and death has become even more palpable to us. Unless someone close to us has passed away, which we might remember for some time, depending on how close that person was. But other than that, life is still going on. Even when people close to us go away, the intensity with which we feel their absence begins to get reduced over a passage of time. People try every way to somehow or hope that even if they die, something of theirs will remain behind. And surely, in some form, people do survive through their children, their grandchildren, the family lineage. So there is some kind of a memory that remains. But other than that, those who do not have such family connections, they are soon forgotten. There is nothing. And sometimes people have buildings named after them. People try to leave some memorials behind, hoping that at least their name will remain in some way. But that's still kind of not real immortality, just the name remaining. And so, as a human being, we are completely dispensable. And I think this is good. It will keep us humble. No one is going to miss us when we die. People are going to forget after a few days, if not the next day. Remembering this is the way to intensify one's dispassion. Because if we remember this, then we know that the only support every one of us has is something or someone that is not affected by this constantly changing nature of the world. And the only being who is not affected by this constantly changing nature of the material world is God. Looking at it subjectively, is this true core of my existence, the Atman, my true self, which is birthless and deathless, which is eternal. That will always be there. That never changes. No one can kill it, no one can do. If I can hold on to that, if I can take my stand upon the Spirit, or if I can take my stand upon the Divine Being, on my Ishta, on my chosen ideal, and if I can hold on to that ideal, come what may, that gives me the stability. That intensifies my dispassion for everything that is so fleeting, so transient. So that's the way to intensify our dispassion. Verse 80. Vishayakhya graho yena suvirakyasina hataha sagacchati bhavam bodhehe param pratyuha varjitaha. One who has killed the crocodile of desire by the sword of genuine dispassion is able to go beyond the ocean of the world without any hurdles. The sword of genuine dispassion. I mentioned earlier about the different levels of dispassion. So having this kind of a very mild dispassion will not help. Having moderate dispassion may help up to a point, but we still have a long way to go. What we need is this intense form of dispassion, because that is like a sword. And that sword if this crocodile comes to grasp me by my neck, this sword will go and chop it off. You might remember there's another one sword that comes in Sri Ramakrishna's life. That when he was studying a non-dual practice under this teacher named Totapuri, so one of the requirements of that practice was to go beyond all the forms of this perishable world. No names and forms. Go beyond all of them. And Sri Ramakrishna said that he had absolutely no difficulty withdrawing his mind from all these perishable, changing forms of the world. No difficulty at all. He already had that intense dispassion. Where he did have difficulty is his whole life was centered, was focused around this form of the Divine Mother, of Mother Kali. That was a form which was almost inseparable from him. And so he said, while his mind could be withdrawn from all other forms, he simply could not brush aside the form of the Divine Mother. Try as he might, he couldn't do it. And his teacher insisted that you have to go beyond forms. And then Sri Ramakrishna describes, he said, he used a different sword there. He said, with the sword of Viveka, the sword of discernment, he said, with great difficulty, with great courage, with great willpower, he chopped off this form of the Divine Mother with that sword of discernment. What does it really mean? One of the ways to understand that is recognizing that the real Mother, the real Divine Mother, is beyond form and beyond formlessness. That clinging to the form can be beneficial, but going beyond the form is even more beneficial. So that's the kind of a discernment process that he used. And he said he used that sword of discernment, and then his mind soared into this infinite realm beyond form and even beyond the notion of formlessness. It's not that his mind went into the formless, because formless can make sense, is the opposite pole of form. So it's not about the competition, is not between form and formlessness. The goal is to go beyond the idea of form and beyond the idea of the formless as well. So that is where his mind went. So he used the sword of discernment. What is mentioned here in verse 80 is the sword of dispassion. But the idea is same. To go beyond the ocean of the world without any hurdles. Now the word ocean of the world is often used in Vedanta texts because ocean is a body of water which seems almost limitless. We usually can see the other bank of a river, most rivers. But the ocean just seems limitless. We just see the horizon. And so this is the image that is often used, that this relative world of names and forms is like an ocean. And so we have a long way to go. And the ocean of the world, there will be hurdles on the way. There could be crocodiles on the way. But whatever hurdles come in the way, can be killed by the sword of dispassion. So we have to find ways to intensify or to make our dispassion stronger, our detachment stronger. The more attached we get caught. That's the idea. Verse 81. Vishama Vishaya Marge Gacchato Nacha Buddhehe Pratipadamabhiyato Mrityurapyesha Vidhi Hitasujana Guruktya Gacchata Swasya Yuktya Prabhavati Phala Siddhi Satyamityeva Vidhi. Know that a person with an impure mind treading the difficult path of sense objects is overcome at every step with hurdles, even death. Know this to be true, that the destination is reached successfully by one who follows one's reasoning, which is trained by the words of the teacher and other holy people. The word here is person with an impure mind, anacha buddhi. In Sanskrit, the word acha means that which is good, pure, transparent. You see, in many Indian languages, in Hindi, for instance, they say acha. It comes from Sanskrit. Acha means pure. So, an prefix before that makes it a negative. So, anacha means not pure, not clear, not transparent. And that is what is the word used here, impure mind. Sometimes they add a different prefix called su. That means very or more or extreme. So, su acha becomes swacha. Even swacha means pure or clear. So, a person with an impure mind, that is a mind that is attached to the perishable material sense objects, treading the difficult path of sense objects, is overcome at every step with hurdles, even death. We saw in an earlier verse how attachment to even a single sense object can lead to the death. The different animals that were mentioned, elephant and so on, how they can be trapped. A lot of times when the wild animals are trapped, those who trap them use some of the weaknesses, natural weaknesses of these creatures to trap them. And because we are attracted to all these different sense objects, all of these senses and their objects can become our own weaknesses. Look at the phrase, the difficult path of sense objects. The Sanskrit is Vishama, Vishaya, Marga. Vishama means difficult. Vishaya is sense object. Marga is a path. You might remember going back to that same Upanishad, Kathopanishad, it has a beautiful chariot imagery, where also in that imagery, the path on which this chariot is moving, the body is the chariot, the senses are the horses, the mind is the reins, the intellect is the charioteer, and the Atman is the master of the chariot. And this chariot is going on the road, and that road is the sense objects. Even death, you might also recollect in the second chapter of the Gita, verses 62 and 63, they have a chain reaction, starting with attachment to objects, how attachment ultimately leads to one's own ruin. Look at the final part of that verse also, which is trained by the words of the teacher and other holy people. Follows one's reasoning, which is trained by the words of the teacher and other holy people. What does it mean? Trained by the words of the teacher and holy people. That is, every one of us has the capacity to reason, but it's not enough to have the ability to apply logic or apply reasoning. That reasoning needs to be purified. All of the principal yogas, the first thing that these yogas do is purification. Bhakti yoga, the path of devotion, the first thing Bhakti yoga does is it purifies our emotions. Jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, the first thing that the path of knowledge does is it purifies our power of reasoning. Similarly, Raja Yoga and Karma Yoga, both of these, it purifies and strengthens our willpower. Raja Yoga, willpower as it is applied in the inner world, and Karma Yoga, inner willpower as it is employed in the external world. So these yogas, the first thing they do is purification of the power of reason, the power of emotions, and the willpower. Only when it is purified in this way, the mind becomes strong. The mind has the ability then to grasp and understand and see subtle realities, subtle objects. And the Atman is the subtlest of all. Sukshmat sukshmataram. It's more subtle than the subtlest thing we know of. And therefore, in order to grasp, to understand, to realize the spirit, the mind must become very, very subtle. And that is what the process of purification is. I think we will stop here today. Look at the next words will require some more explanation, and we'll have some time now for your comments, questions, and thoughts. First, can holding on to the memory of a loved one who has died help us develop attachment for an Ishta? If we can connect in our mind the one who has passed away, the loved one, to the Ishta in some way, so that every time we think of the loved one, we're thinking of the Ishta, then it can help us develop an attachment for Ishta. There has to be that connection. You might remember an incident in Sri Ramakrishna's life, that there was this one devotee, and her Ishta was Krishna. And she also had a young nephew, and who needed caring, a very, very of tender age. And so she was the like a foster mother for that little baby. And so because she had to take care of him, she was very attached to that nephew. And so she told Sri Ramakrishna that every time I try to meditate on Krishna, my mind naturally goes towards this little nephew of mine and concern for his safety and taking care and so on. What shall I do? And then Sri Ramakrishna said, try to see Krishna in that baby. So that's the same principle we can use. Because if I think of my loved one as the loved one, then there wouldn't be any connection with the Ishta itself. But if I can find some way of associating all my cherished memories of the loved one and connect them with my Ishta in some way, kind of merge them in my Ishta in some way, then it may be possible to develop or intensify one's attachment to one's own Ishta. All right, I think there are no more questions. And so, at least not on this Google Doc that I have in front of me. So we will stop here today and we will continue with this study next Wednesday. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. On Sunday at 11, our subject for the satsang will be the story of Shiva. And next Tuesday, that is on 1st of March, we will have Shivaratri Puja. Shivaratri Puja, if many of you are aware, occurs in the evening. So the puja will start at 6:30. It will be online as we have been doing for some time now. One of the special characteristics of Shivaratri Puja is many observe a fast on that day. Just like the different levels of dispassion that I mentioned earlier, even fasts can be done in different levels. So the extreme form of fast that sometimes people do is not eat or drink anything that day. A fast that is observed by most people is liquids are fine, whether it's water or tea, coffee, whatever you drink, liquids are okay. Sometimes people also take some moderate amount of fruits, but not eating your regular breakfast, lunch that day. So that would be one way of observing fast, with liquids and fruit. And at the end of the puja will begin at 6:30, probably should end by about 8:30 or 9. Then you can have prasad. And the way we do prasad now in this online format is usually if you prepare at least one dish as an offering and keep it ready while the puja is going on, and keep also some flowers by your side. So when there is time for flower offering, I will tell you the proper mantra to be chanted, and you can offer those flowers in your own family shrine. And then later, when it's time for food offering, again I'll tell you how to do it, and then you can offer that food in your shrine. And at the end of the puja, then you can enjoy that as a prasad. So that would be next Tuesday. And so because we are having this puja next Tuesday, next Wednesday, we will not study Vivekachudamani. So the study group then will meet a fortnight from today. So no Vivekachudamani next Wednesday. Instead, we'll have the puja on Tuesday. So that's the upcoming programs. So we'll close with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength freedom, and clear understanding, where we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto